Hello, my name is Maxine Moffett, and you are tuned in to Bridge Africa This Week, the program that connects you to Africa's top news stories, from politics to economics and sports to culture. We will begin with the top headline stories. The International Monetary Fund downgraded Africa's 2016 economic growth rate to 3%. The organization, however, predicted stable growth for some African countries. The Confederation of African Football opened an investigation into the players used by Equatorial Guinea in their qualifiers for the 2016 Africa Women's Cup of Nations. Welcome back to Bridge Africa This Week. A revised IMF economic growth forecast said that Africa's economic growth for 2016 has dropped to 3%. The continent's growth has been revised downward in line with the less rosy view of global economic performance.
The International Monetary Fund kept forecast for economic growth rate across many African countries, including South Africa. The IMF fund kept its forecast for economic growth in South Africa for a second time this year, after the central bank raised borrowing costs and as policy uncertainty increased. The IMF kept its forecast for 2016 global economic growth on Tuesday, estimating that the gross domestic product would expand at a rate of 3.2%. rather than 3.4% forecast in January. The South African gross domestic product would only grow at a 0.6% this year, according to International Monetary Fund statistics. Not only South Africa's economic growth rate has been downgraded, other top African countries like Nigeria are also involved. The IMF estimates that the oil industry is actually degrading. These statistics are a reflection of the gloomy economic situation in the world today.
A Somali journalist, Hassan Hanafi, who helped the militant group Al-Shabaab to kill the 5 fellow reporters, was executed by a firing squad on April 11th in Somalia. At least 5 people were killed and 7 others wounded after a suicide bomber's attack on a restaurant near a local government building in the Somali capital of Mogadishu, only a few hours after Hanafi's execution.
Born in the central Hiran region of Somalia in the early 1980s, Hassan Hanafi, once a respected broadcaster, was sentenced to death last month by a military court in the capital Mogadishu and was executed this 11th of April by a firing squad in Somalia. He assisted the Islamic militant group by identifying possible targets amongst journalists between 2007 and 2011. He joined its armed wing after working for Radio Andalus, which served as the group's mouthpiece. More than 25 journalists had been murdered in Somalia since 2007, according to the Committee to Protect Journalists. While he was working for Al-Shabaab, reports say he ran a secret bureau, monitoring news and threatening any reporter who spoke out against Al-Shabaab or portrayed the group negatively, and threatened to eliminate those who refused to join the group. In 2014, he was arrested by police in neighboring Kenya, where he had fled and was extradited to Somalia, where he was finally executed. Meantime, the death of reporters in Somalia was said to have significantly reduced since his arrest. Al-Shabaab frequently stages attacks in Mogadishu and other cities and still controls many rural areas in southern Somalia.
The World Health Organization revealed that 21 people have died from a new outbreak of yellow fever in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some of the deaths have been attributed to the outbreak of the disease in the neighboring country of Angola.
A World Health Organization report stated that the deaths had occurred in January to March, with 151 suspected cases recorded in Angola, with risk of further spread to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So far, 21 persons have died of the disease in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The World Health Organization said the Democratic Republic of Congo health authorities had set up a national committee to respond to the outbreak, including screening and sanitary controls on the country's borders. It added that the country's health ministry had activated a contingency plan which included more community engagement to fight the disease and better training of health workers. Yellow fever is a virus that can cause bleeding, jaundice, and kidney failure. It is spread by mosquitoes, usually the Aedes aegypti mosquito, the same species that spread the Zika virus. While a vaccine can prevent infection, there is no specific drug treatment for people who are infected. It is widespread in tropical regions of Africa and South America.
The recently elected president of the Central African Republic, Faustin Archange Touadera, named his first cabinet in an effort to bring about reconciliation to his country following years of sectarian violence.
President Touadera named both political allies and former rivals to the new government, but left out supporters of Muslim and Christian militias behind the country's violence. 3 high-ranking jobs in the 23-member cabinet went to candidates who ran against Touadera in this year's first round of presidential elections. All the 3 later offered their support to Touadera in February runoff vote. They are Joseph Diakité, who was named Defense Minister, Jean-Serge Bakassa, who was chosen as Interior Minister, and Charles Ahmed Douban, in charge of Foreign Affairs. Touadera's former campaign manager, Simplice Sarangi, will become Prime Minister, taking over from a transitional government that helped lead the country to this year's presidential elections. The new cabinet would also include several members who were ministers under the government of former President Francois Bozizé. President Touadera won February's runoff election with 60% of the vote. Central African Republic was thrown into chaos in early 2013 when Muslim Seleka rebels ousted President Bozizé from office. Nearly 1 million people were displaced by the violence, which left the country divided along ethnic and religious lines. Will this new government close the divide? That remains to be seen.
A video believed to have been recorded in December of last year by the terrorist group Boko Haram was sent to the Nigerian government to prove that the abducted Chibok girls were still alive. This video provoked feelings of major dissatisfaction among parents of the abducted girls over Nigeria's slow response to rescue the girls. The International Monetary Fund revealed that the government of Angola has requested for negotiations with the fund over possible financial aid to the country.
The IMF Deputy Managing Director, Ming Zhu, said the organization will discuss with the country's authorities during the upcoming spring meetings in Washington, D.C. and in Angola on an economic program that could be supported by a 3-year extended fund facility. Angolan officials explained that the assistance will help the country to implement the necessary structural reforms and make the economy more competitive. Recently, President José Eduardo dos Santos told a meeting of the governing MPLA Central Committee that he had dipped into Angola's sovereign fund to meet the February parole for the country's civil servants. This implies that Angola has a serious cash flow problem and can no longer resolve its economic and financial problems alone, but needs both time and external support to work towards solutions, and such help comes with strings. According to many economic experts, the IMF will impose conditions including forcing Angola to open up its market to foreign competition. That is the price for the IMF bailout.
This is Bridge Africa This Week, bringing you Africa's top news stories. Still to come on the program, the Confederation of African Football investigates the eligibility of Equatorial Guinea players. Please stay with us right after the break. About 2,000 Zimbabweans, headed by the opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai, marched across the capital of Harare to protest what they have considered as a poor state of the country's economy. Today, I am in the studio with Valerie Kolong Insalar, who will tell us more about the issues that are happening in Zimbabwe. So Valerie, tell me more about the protests that are led by the opposition party in Zimbabwe.
Well, the protests were basically held in the street of Harare, the capital, to send out 2 key messages to the government. led by Robert Mugabe. The first was about the state of the economy in Zimbabwe, and secondly, it was about the longevity of Robert Mugabe, who has been in power for decades. Now, talking about the state of the economy, the protests were out to, tell the government that, look, enough is enough. But what we do know from previous statistics, which will give you an indication on the state of the economy, is that, for instance, in 2014, Zimbabwe's unemployment rate stood at about 11%. And so this has made many Zimbabweans to actually flee to neighboring countries like South Africa. And just recently, the South African government said enough was enough. We have to send some of the nationals of different countries back to their respective countries. And Zimbabwe had a larger share of that. So as far as the political aspect, the economic aspect is concerned, that was the key message during the protest.
So what are the economic issues that are happening in Zimbabwe now?
Well, as you mentioned, there are issues related to employment. There are issues related to inflation. The country is facing a lot of high inflation rate. There's also the diamond that actually is existing in the country, very rich in mineral resources, but unfortunately, most of these resources are being owned by very few political elite. And so during the protest in the street of Harare, this is how Morgan Tsvangirai reacted to the government's inability to look into the economic problems of the country.
People demand an overthrow of the government. We are demanding a dignified exit for ANTI-MUGABE. Mugabe has no solution to the crisis because he is too tired. We are not afraid to lead the struggle even at its worst time. Musashka, because what we are fighting for is for your future.
But on a positive note, the government has started the process of nationalizing the diamond industry, correct?
Yes, you're right. In fact, it's already created a company, the Zimbabwe Diamond Company. That's a key process, in the management of the diamond resources in the country. So it is expected, that this, as from now, there will be transparency in the way this resource is being managed in the country. So this gives you an idea that there will be no more black market situation as was feared in the past. Remember, Zimbabwe hasn't signed the Kimberley process, which is in charge of making sure that diamond doesn't spread into the black market.
And what are the political complaints of the opposition party?
The complaint basically is about the longevity of Robert Mugabe in power. And even when you look at his age at 92. So the political party, the opposition in Zimbabwe is saying that enough is enough. He's been in power for many years, for decades, and they don't see the state of the economy actually moving ahead. But unfortunately, Robert Mugabe said he will only resign or even step down from power, if you like, when he's 100 years.
But don't you think that the opposition party is really in a particular situation, since even their opposition leader has been the head of the opposition, Morgan Tsvangirai, for almost 20 years as well? It seems like they're both mirroring each other. Would you not say that's the case?
Well, you're right. But talking about this protest, to be very specific, the objective was very clear during the protest. You remember Robert Mugabe has said again that in 2018, when the next elections will be organized, he's going to stand again. He actually stood against Morgan Tsvangirai, as you mentioned, the 2013 presidential election. So, well, it's true. He's been in power too for the opposition for many years. Yes. But he does think that it is time for him to actually take over the leadership of the country as a president of the Republic of Zimbabwe, not just as the president of the opposition party.
Wow. Thank you so much, Valerie, for joining us on Bridge Africa this week.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome back to Bridge Africa this week. Diamonds are thought to be one of the most precious stones in the world. This explains why the management of it is very important. In Zimbabwe, the government recently created the Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Company as to ensure that the revenue inflow of diamonds flow into the government's coffers.
Mines Minister Walter Chidagwa said the Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Company will look at diamonds produced and sold and set aside money for running the company, exploration and development activities, while the rest will be forwarded to the National Treasury. The diamond company took over operations in Marange Diamond Fields recently after government cancelled the permit of mining firms in the area. due to lack of transparency. The affected companies include Bada Diamonds, Ajin Investment, Jinan, Kusena and Diamond Mining Company. The minister told reporters recently that the company will not wait for 6 months or a year to declare dividends to government, but will ensure funds are transferred to the treasury every month. The original idea of consolidating came after recognition that government had not benefited from the proceeds of diamond mining in the last 5 years. The minister also said the company will take over Russian-owned diamond claims in Charleswood, Chimanimani, and pay compensation for all the machinery and equipment after evaluation. Government has established an inquiry into the disappearance of $15 million worth of Merange diamonds, which according to experts, can turn around Zimbabwe's economy.
The Nigerian Navy revealed that pirates attacked a Turkish cargo ship off the coast of Nigeria. It said 6 of the crew members on board were kidnapped. The nationalities of the kidnapped crew members was not immediately known.
The ship's Turkish owners said none of the crew was injured in the attack and added that they had no information of their whereabouts. Company officials said the pirates had not contacted them. Meantime, Nigerian officials worked with Interpol and the country's secret police to secure the crew's release. Nigeria's coastal areas are increasingly becoming a hotspot for piracy, reports the BBC Nigeria correspondent. Most of the country's oil wealth comes from the Niger Delta, but the area remains underdeveloped.
A French soldier was killed by a landmine while traveling in the convoy from Gao to the town of Tessalit, which is north of Mali. He died when the mine exploded under the vehicle carrying him. 3 other soldiers in the same vehicle were injured by the blast. Senegalese authorities have announced that the country's national carrier, Senegal Airlines, will be replaced by a new one in coming weeks. This move follows recent major losses and mismanagement by the company.
The move follows a decision by the aviation regulator to revoke the company's air operator's certificate due to major losses and mismanagement. Finance Minister Amadou Ba made the announcement but did not give details on the new company set to replace Senegal Airlines, crippled by debts. The airline, created in 2009, owes more than $78 million to creditors, and the union leaders, speaking on behalf of its 229 workers, said they are owed several months' worth of pay. Several African airlines are feeling the effects of stiff competition from major carriers. Last month, Cape Verde's national airline announced plans to reduce its workforce and to review flight destinations. Kenya Airways also recently announced that it will lay off 600 workers. These problems plaguing African airlines reflect the corruption and mismanagement the continent faces. It also reflects the stiff competition in the global aviation market.
Over 30 housing units were submerged while 200 persons have been rendered homeless in Calabar, Cross River State in Nigeria, following a heavy downpouring last week.
Some of the areas affected include 8 Mile, Cottage Staff Quarters, Howell, Okoro Agbo, Koldier and Target Street. Other areas include Ifut Uwanze Community in Calabar South, Pwapa Moritalia Mohammed Highway, Wapi Junction among others. The flood, which followed 5 hours of heavy downpour, also grounded business activities and movement in Calabar, the state capital. Flood victims lamented that properties worth millions of naira had been lost to the disaster. They called on the government to come to their aid by relocating residents of the flood-prone areas to safer parts of the Calabar city. Speaking on the issue, the director of State Emergency Management Agency said most of the times the flood is caused by residents of the affected areas who indiscriminately dump refuse inside the water channels.
The Nigerian Minister of Information and Culture denied reports by the media that the terrorist group Boko Haram is demanding $50 million from the government as ransom before releasing the abducted Chibok girls.
Speaking to the Voice of America, Information Minister Lai Mohammed said ransom reports were not new and had several versions. He stated that this had happened in the past and added that the Nigerian government will not make any statement related to the affair until credible information is gathered. Mr. Mohammed assured that President Muhammadu Buhari would deliver on his promise to do all he could to ensure the release of the schoolgirls during a recent meeting with the parents of the abducted girls. The minister restated government's position that it had made significant progress in the fight against Boko Haram, as their militants had been dislodged from their fortresses, including their main operation centers in the Sambisa forest.
Some have already been held, others are ongoing. The conduct of these elections has been perceived differently by a variety of different political actors. But what are the political views of our political consultant, Kini Nsam? Mr. Nsam joins us today. So what do you think about the political conduct of the African presidential elections that have occurred this year?
From the look of things, Africa is still largely a desert of badly managed elections, given that it involves incumbents who are behaving like despots. They have the sit-tight propensity to be there for decades. So it is largely a desert of badly managed elections, even though we have oases of elections that have been accepted in other countries. If you take the case, for instance, of about elections, we'd like to go back to Burundi, where you have Pierre Nkurunziza. You know that, of course, when an incumbent is involved, he does everything to rig the elections. If you get back to what just happened in the Congo Brazzaville, you discover that it was not a free and fair election. And we are also made to understand that because Africa doesn't have, free and fair elections in their countries, it is the very problem of governance, because anybody that is talking about governance must start with free and fair elections. As I said, we have some glimmer of hope, like what is happening in Senegal, where there is a referendum to reduce the term of mandate to 5 years. And of course, you know that in Benin, the incumbent decided to step down, and what happened afterwards was a free and fair elections, during which Patrice Talon triumphed as the president of that country at the moment. The elections in Chad is also been replete with a lot of irregularities, because if you understand that they are already arresting members of the civil society for protesting against certain aspects of the elections that were not free and fair, you will be made to understand that at the end of the day, we cannot have a free and fair elections in that country.
And what do you think can be done about the subsequent presidential elections that will occur in Africa this year?
The credibility of elections in Africa lie in the hands of two actors. The first actor is the people of that country. You know that if I take the case of Nigeria, where the former President Obasanjo tried to change the constitution, to amend the constitution to have another term in office, the Nigerians stood up, the Senate stood up and said that was not going to happen. And of course, his attempt to hang on in power forever was botched. It also relies, and the issue also lies in the hands of the government, the people in place, the officials. Because if they want to have a good place in history, if they want posterity to remember them as people who brought democracy to their country, democracy to their various countries, of course they will initiate reforms to quit the stage on a very clean slate. Because when you organize elections and you leave at the end of your mandate, you are living as a hero. The world is so intricately linked that what usually happens over there is likely to happen over here. And that is why I will come to say that the international community has an important role to play in elections.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nsam, for joining us. football's world governing body, FIFA, issued a warning to Nigeria to either reinstate its sacked Nigerian Federation officials or face suspension. It follows last week's Regional High Court ruling that Chris Giwa should be installed as the federation's president and that the FIFA-recognized head, Amaju Pinnick, be sacked.
In a letter dated 11 April 2016, FIFA's acting Secretary General Marcus Gardner said the ruling by a just federal high court is classified as interference. Mr. Marcus' statement reads thus: all member associations have to manage their affairs independently and with no influence from third parties. In addition, and according to Article 68 of the FIFA Statute, recourse to ordinary court of law is prohibited unless specifically provided for in the FIFA regulations. The Nigerian Football Federation appealed against the court ruling, insisting that Pinnick is still the head of the federation, while Giwa's faction and all other non-federation staff were denied access into the football house by police in the capital Abuja on Monday. The ongoing power struggle means Nigeria's Olympic team is at risk of being banned from Rio this year, and the Super Eagles could also be denied access to qualify for the 2018 World Cup in Russia. The qualifying draw takes place in June this year.
8 teams that qualified for the 2016 Women's African Cup of Nations to be held in Cameroon are known. They include the host country Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and South Africa, as well as Ghana. The competition begins in November this year.
Africa's football powerhouse Nigeria will be at their 12th participation at the Women's AFCON 2016. Having lifted the trophy 9 times, the Super Eagles are poised to repeat history in Cameroon. Then come Equatorial Guinea with their 5 participations, though drowned in controversy over eligibility of players as CAF investigates. The team hopes to lift the trophy for the 3rd time, having done so in 2008 and 2012. South Africa, who are runners-up in 1995, 2000, 2008 and 2012, will be in their 13th AFCON participation. Ghana were runners-up 3 times alongside host country Cameroon. Other teams like Egypt, Zimbabwe and Kenya lack historical track record to post any threat in AFCON 2016. History aside, these teams might spring up surprises and turn the tide of history in their favor come November 2016 in Cameroon.
The Confederation of African Football confirmed to the BBC that they have opened an investigation into the players used by Equatorial Guinea in their qualifier games for the 2016 African Cup of Nations. The investigation is aimed at determining whether the players were ineligible. Thank you so much for watching Bridge Africa this week. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook and Twitter page at Bridge Africa 24 and get your daily updates about what's happening throughout the continent on our website, bridgeafrica24.com. Peace and blessings.